Hey gang, Scott Davenport here. So I got asked a few questions about setting up the memory recall buttons or modes in the Sony cameras, and I'm going to do this on this Sony A6400. It's a similar process for anything else. Now, I'm setting up a couple of modes for movie recording, and I have two basic shooting scenarios that I want to be able to do. One is with a very shallow depth of field, and one is with a deeper depth of field. But I also want to maintain the shutter priority. I want the shutter speed to always be 1/50th or 1/60th. I'm going to go with 1/50th for these setups. That's pretty close to either a 24 frame per second or a 30 frame per second. You kind of like double that, and you get a pretty good fluid cinematic feel on the movies that you record. So let's go through that setup in the camera. Well, first I'll rotate the dial over into the movie mode setting, and then I'll press the function key on the back of the camera so we can get into the configuration screen for that shooting mode. Once I've pressed the function button, I have all sorts of different controls down here, most of which I'm happy with. Continuous focus, a wide focus area. This camera for me is going to be a video camera capturing me in the field working on my photography. I've registered my face with the camera, and so wide focus area with my face registered, the camera's going to find me, focus on me, and that'll be all right. What I do want to change is aperture and shutter speed. Down the lower right corner, the exposure mode, choose that and move on down to the bottom for manual. Once I choose manual, I want to alter the aperture and the shutter speed. Now, aperture will be controlled with the top dial on the camera next to the shooting mode. So as I rotate that around, I can change the aperture. And right now, let's set one for f8. And then the click wheel, if I rotate the click wheel, that will control the shutter speed. And I said I want to have around a 50th of a second. Let's choose 1/50th. Great. Now with those two things set, so the changes I want to make, I'll now register that as a memory recall. I'll press the menu button on the back of the camera. I'll go all the way up to camera settings number 1. Move over a few pages until we find memory recall, and this one will set me up for memory recall number 1. I have 1 and 2 across the top, 1 and 2. I'll choose 1, and now I've registered that. I want to make one more. I also want to register a shallower depth of field at 1/50th of a second. So back out of the menus, and I'll press function again, make sure everything else is still looking good. Great. Rotating my aperture wheel on the top of the camera, I'll move that over to my widest or most open aperture that I have on this lens, 3.5. Menu button one more time. Memory recall, this time I'll move over to number 2. And I'll register that. So if I go back and forth now, on the top of the camera, I rotate over to MR, memory recall. And I have a couple of choices. Number 2 across the top, that's just what we have. We have manual exposure, we have 1/50th and 3.5 for the aperture. If we go over to number 1, we'll see we have 1/50th and f8. So it's very easy for me to switch between the two in the field. You dial over to MR on the top, you find the recall, choose it, and then you're ready to go and shoot. So that's how you set up one of the memory recall options in a Sony camera. Well, I'm eager to get this camera out and put it to work. I hope you'll join us on my field adventures. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, I appreciate it if you did. You got questions about photography, drop them in the comments below, or you can ask me through my website if you want to keep it private. And until next time, my name is Scott Davenport, and happy shooting.